It's not going to change for women in the Christian community who are in leadership if we're not talking about these things. So this podcast is speaking true, vulnerable experiences where women really tried their best to show up well, even when they failed. And how do we extend grace in failures and mistakes, knowing that to be a leader and to be a woman in leadership is one of the hardest things, especially in the Christian community. This podcast is for women who are pastors, CEOs, ministry leaders, founders, and women serving within the fivefold who carry vision publicly and wrestle privately. As you listen, you will gain courage to confront your own story without shame, wisdom to strengthen your leadership, and clarity to rebuild with discernment, boundaries, and grace. You will not just hear testimony, you will receive language for your process, tools for healthier leadership, and the confidence to lead again without losing your soul. This is the Sword Grace Unscripted podcast. Welcome, everybody, to Sword and Grace Unscripted. I always say how excited I am. I truly, genuinely am excited about every woman that I get to speak to who are doing incredible things for the kingdom. I was on Melissa's podcast previously, so I'm really overjoyed just having her on mine because she has an incredible story, will empower you. So I encourage everybody to listen because you cannot leave this episode you will just be so excited to carry on whatever the Lord is asking you to do. Melissa, from a very young age, experienced more trauma and abuse than any one person should have to endure, including parental drug addiction, abuse, homelessness as a child. She survived a school shooting at the age of 15 and witnessed the death of her brother at the age of 18. She experienced many physical and emotional ailments as a result of this trauma and stress on her nervous system. Ultimately, she dedicated her life and is dedicating her life to helping people. After years of being failed by the traditional medical system, both personally and professionally, Melissa shifted her career and she's now a holistic trauma and anxiety coach and is the owner of Holistic Health. And she is helping women break the cycle of survival mode and overcoming anxiety and stubborn physical symptoms without pills and protocols. She wants every person to know and believe that they are valuable and that anything is possible. Melissa, welcome. I'm so excited you're here with me.
Yay, I'm so happy to be here, Tina.
Yeah, so my goodness, your bio. I knew some of your story. And I just look at where you are today. And that's why when you had reached out, I thought, women have to hear from you because of what you have had to walk through and what you're doing in your life today. Okay, I'm just going to jump in. What would you say? Yeah, let's just go there. You know, there's so many different things you even said in your bio. I want to touch upon all of them. But maybe where I want you to start, was there a time in your life with everything you have gone through? I mean, you became a nurse and then you changed again, recognizing different barriers. But what would you say might have been the thing that held you back the most in those seasons?
Myself. Always. It's always myself.
Yourself.
Yeah, I would absolutely say anytime that I've ever been held back, it's been my own belief that I am not qualified or not worthy or not enough. I think I speak a lot about trauma and how trauma impacts our identity. And I believe that trauma actually imparts and it puts an identity on us that's not true. It's not an identity from the Lord. It's the identity that we're not good enough, that we're not loved, that we're not worthy. And that's really like the belief that I carried for many, many years. And to be totally honest, still comes up sometimes. It's not a destination, it's a journey. And so there's, anytime I've ever been held back, it's definitely been that wound resurfacing in another way.
Well, and I think it's really interesting that you highlighted, and I don't think often people make this association that trauma, when you're exposed and experience trauma, that it creates an internalized belief system that has such an impact. So I really am so appreciative that you stated that because I don't know that many people actually would stop and say, when this particular thing happened, whether it's abuse or as you've walked through traumatic experience, that would have made sense logically, because nothing's ever logical when we internalize those beliefs.
Yeah.
Also, Melissa, I really appreciate that you said it's still things that I'm walking through, because I think many women believe that, no, I need to be healed in order to do anything. So maybe speak more into that, because that's such an impactful statement, is that I still am walking through those belief systems, and the impact of that for you even today.
Yeah, I think I say a lot, like, healing is not a destination, it's a journey, right? And we're all on our own journeys. And yeah, like I've said for so long and realized, many years ago, is that this exposure to trauma and any event, trauma is not the event, it's what happens inside of you as a result of that event. So any event that's highly emotional and you feel like you're walking through that alone, even if you're not physically alone, if you don't feel like you have a safe place to be seen, heard, and loved, which is the core desire of every human being. And I think that's speaks, so much to the impact of childhood trauma is really why childhood trauma puts these belief patterns into us, or solidifies those belief patterns inside of us, is because we don't feel children have things happen to them. It's really emotional. And for one reason or another, maybe the parent works a lot, maybe that's the abuser, whatever, they don't feel like they have support. They're not seen, they're not heard, they're not loved. And when you're processing those highly emotional events, that's the landscape in which trauma happens. That's how it gets, they say, stored inside of you. That's how you get that energy in motion, emotion, energy in motion stored inside of you. And then that energy creates these belief patterns that show up in all areas of our life, because how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Yeah.
So if you believe, trauma happened, whatever it was, it doesn't have to be, something childhood abuse. It doesn't have to be my story. It could be, getting made fun of in school, or getting pushed on the playground, or losing a job, or breaking up with a boyfriend, or any number of things. And it's not yours is better than worse than mine or anything like that. There's no hierarchy. It's not the event, it's what happens inside of you. So when you have those highly emotional events and you're going through it by yourself and you develop those patterns inside of you, it creates these beliefs. And if you have a belief that I'm not worthy, it's going to show up in every way. And I've had that, like I said, like it still comes up today for me. I have the tendency to, my core wound is I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. I believed for a long time. I didn't know the Lord growing up, and I believed for a long time like my parents didn't love me. I now know intellectually that they loved me to the level that they were able to, right? And that wasn't what I needed. It didn't fully meet the needs that I had as a child, but they did the best that they could, even though they fell short. And we all fall short of the glory of God, right?
Yes.
But and to me, that developed these habits and these patterns where I developed the perfectionist tendency. If I can't do it perfectly, it's not good enough. I tend to overperform to show my worth. I try to over deliver, to prove that I'm good enough to be accepted, to be loved, to be seen. And yeah, those are still patterns that I have struggled with. I think it's a layer, it's an onion, right?
Yeah.
Different layers. You heal one layer, and then there's another layer ready to be healed.
Absolutely. Well, and the fact that the connection to, you're drawing from the past to the present, and I don't think people have recognized, and people have assumed that because it's in the past, it can't be bothering me anymore, or there's this, expectation of like, what can I do about it? There's nothing I can do about the past because you can't go back and fix it. But here's what you're revealing for people is my past showed up in what I believed about myself. And then, Melissa, the fact that you can connect that logically, cognitively, I might actually try to convince myself of that. But one of the things that I know you do substantially well today is you're helping people understand that our stories are not cognitive. And, how does that show up today? And I know in just talking with many women, when you just bring that revelation as you are about this is what my past has shown up to be. Like when you said I am, whether it's performance or people pleasing, and you're making those connections. And I know some women are probably thinking about, oh my goodness, I have this story when I was a kid. I have this teacher who spoke this over me. I was bullied. There's all of those stories that are getting transferred. So what I'm curious if you can maybe speak to is if there's someone who is listening and watching and they're making these connections, what are some of the things that you started to do when you noticed, goodness, this is my story that keeps showing up in my life? What have you been doing to almost like conquer in various ways? Maybe not complete, as you said, we're a work in progress.
Yeah, it's a destination. It's not a destination, it's a journey. So anybody who tells you that they're healed and they've, reached, like, I don't believe that we reach that place until we're in the presence of the Lord.
Yeah, that's right.
In heaven. So I think it's always, if anybody tells you that, they're lying. Go run the other direction.
Yep. Yep. We need a savior here. So we certainly.
So my brother died when I was 18, and it was shortly after that I decided to become a nurse. And I really started pursuing that as a way for me to use that pain and turn it into purpose. I realized when he was in the hospital, it was a tragic accident. He was declared brain dead within a matter of a couple of hours of being in the hospital. We decided as a family to donate his organs, and that is not a fast process. It takes some time. So during that time, we were in the hospital and we had the nurses. There was, of course, doctors and other specialties there too, but the nurses were like angels on earth, and they just served my family so well and loved my family so much. I had a particularly difficult time because everybody had a difficult time, but I think when I think back, I remember I was just a wreck. Mm-hmm. In the hallway, like laying on the hallway floor, just sobbing uncontrollably because I couldn't stop seeing. I was there when his accident happened. I watched it happen. And I couldn't stop seeing it.
Melissa, that'd be so hard.
Yeah. When you have that event, some highly emotional event like that, that's when you get those trauma patterns imprinted into your nervous system. So even though that event wasn't happening anymore, my nervous system, which is, I'm talking autonomic nervous system. Your nervous system is your brain and your spinal cord, but then there's this other branch that's called the autonomic nervous system. And that's really like your body's internal surveillance system. So it's the threat detector, constantly scanning your external environment for anything that could unalive you, because that's we have to, as an animal, primal need is to stay alive, right? Mm-hmm. So we're wired to find anything in the environment that could cause us death, that could cause us harm. And so when you have those events and you get that kind of not finished loop where you don't have the support, you don't have the tools, the resources, the intellectual capacity, so many different things go into it, but you get kind of stuck, for lack of a better term, in that response, meaning that your body actually senses that there is danger still, even though the danger is gone. So think of it like, caveman days and like the saber-toothed tiger, right? Yeah. Like your body, or you can think of even like in modern day example, like if you're crossing the street or walking down the street late at night and it's dark and the street lights flickering and somebody comes walking the other direction. That kind of like gut feeling where you kind of know.
Yeah, that's such a good description.
That this is like, you're like, ooh, this is maybe dangerous. Like your gut will tell you, is this a dangerous situation, right? And it can be right and wrong, and our head gets in the way a lot. Yeah. But if that initial gut instinct is usually right. Mm-hmm. And so that's a really good like example of the nervous system, how the nervous system works, and that you can get stuck in sensing that danger is there, even if it's not there. And so that's really where I lived for years after my brother's accident.
Yeah.
There was so much other trauma that contributed to that. So it was just kind of compounding.
Mm-hmm.
And I lived in that state that's called fight or flight. I sensed danger all the time, like 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
I had horrible anxiety. I had panic to the point where I didn't sleep for like days on end, for years. I would go days and days and days without sleeping, 4 hours in like a week's period, which is, we know from, war.
Yes. Yeah.
Keeping people alive is actually torture.
Mm-hmm.
When I was about 23 is when I started, I had just become a nurse, and I started to understand that there maybe was more to the story, that maybe the physical stuff that I was feeling, the anxiety, had gut symptoms, I had skin symptoms, I had horrible migraines, I had obviously insomnia, panic, all the emotional stuff. And I started, my husband, then he was my boyfriend, suggested at the time that I try to meditate. Not having any like background in medicine or neuroscience or anything. He just reflected back to me, like he said, you seem like you're always up here. Like I feel like if you could just come down here a little bit, you would feel a lot better. Maybe meditation will help you. And so that was really the gateway for me to understanding neuroscience, modern day neuroscience, neuroplasticity, trauma and its impact on the brain, somatic healing, the nervous system, how it can, the polyvagal theory, all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really evolved from there. That was the gateway. I started meditating. For me, meditation ultimately eventually became prayer. And that's how I came to know the Lord. And that's a long answer to like somatic work.
Yeah. And it's so good because in that, Melissa, you gave everybody some really good understanding practically how this shows up and what this looks like in your body and the symptoms that result in that. And, some of the things that I was thinking is how often where people are really uninformed, because here's the thing is that you are at the stage where you are now informed, right? You can understand your nervous system. You understand that your brain has been conditioned to these traumatic experiences. But there's a lot of people who are not in this field, who have not done the research, who are just maybe even know about the word neuroplasticity. Maybe they know or heard of it. And they're operating in a leadership position because, as you identified, one of the responses or symptoms to unresolved trauma is overperforming, is people pleasing. And I know today in the church, there is a lot of leaders, whether in business as Christians, whether there's pastors, there is a lot of people who are operating in unresolved trauma, who are overperforming and people pleasing. And the risk of that, and I'm just going to define it, is collapse. There is a risk of collapse in that, because to have any position with high capacity level, it can be overwhelming to the nervous system. And so, of course, what I hear, which you're really, I'm going to say challenging, encouraging people, is you can't just keep writing it out. You've got to do something. And meditation, as you said, was your gateway to doing that. So as you started to learn and recognizing the symptoms that you were struggling with, were you able to, in time, become more self-aware of what that looked like? And if so, can you maybe describe how you approach that? Because I know there's people who are going to be listening. They're like, I'm not trained in this. Melissa's trained now in doing this. But what are some practical things that you could encourage and help people along their journey?
Yeah. So I believe that another one of the things that trauma does to us is it separates us from our bodies. It separates our mind from our body.
That's so good.
It kind of severs the connection.
Yep.
We start, and just by nature of being alive in 2026 with technology and social media and the way things are and our schedules, the way that we work them now versus, 50, 60, 100 years ago, we spend a lot of time in our heads.
Yes.
And we are very disconnected from what's going on below the neck.
Oh, this is so good.
So I really promote and believe that one of the keys to healing from trauma is reestablishing that connection. And somatic work is one of the ways that I believe that is a very powerful way. Somatic is Greek for soma, is Greek for body. So really just like reestablishing the connection from the mind to the body. The bridge between the mind and the body is the breath. So actually using your breath, I mean, breathing is something that most of us don't think about from day to day. Unless you're me, I think about it all the time. But just spending some time thinking about how you're breathing. When you're in that state of survival, in that fight or flight state, we breathe very shallow and very quickly. So very much up here in our chest, in the high part of our chest, and more quickly than we would if we're in that parasympathetic, which is rest, digest, and heal, which is a much more relaxed, deeper breathing. So even just like the most practical list tool that I use all the time is to tell people to just breathe. 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 times a day. Set an alarm on your phone. 8, 12, and 3, or whatever, 9, 2, and 4, whatever works for you. Set an alarm on your phone. And when it goes off, you don't know monkey business. You don't like, oh, I'll do it in 5 minutes. Like, no. If you need to snooze it one time, you can snooze it one time. But you need to force yourself to stop and allow yourself to take a deep breath into your belly. 30 seconds. That's it. And tell me how it changes your life.
Okay, Melissa, I've had a lot of clients, just as in the therapist life, say, Tina, I've done the breathing, it doesn't work for me. So we know research actually pushes against that. So what do you say to those people who are like, hey, Melissa, I've done the breathing thing, I don't like it, I don't want to pause in my day. I almost want them to be almost challenged a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I think, choose your hard, right? Like, what are you trying to breathe for? Because if you want to feel better, you have to, like, it's hard to live in a state of fight or flight. It's hard to live with chronic symptoms, chronic pain, anxiety, panic, insomnia, diabetes. It's also hard to like make the time to prioritize the breathing and take a time out in your day. And no matter which one you choose, it's hard. So you have to ask yourself, like, get real and ask yourself, which one do I want to choose? Like, one of them to me sounds way better than the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And all things take time to get used to. I think there needs to be more of a gentleness that people need to have for themselves and say, yeah, you may not like it to start with, but it's something. And I love that you said, choose your heart, right? And that's a really good understanding to say, like, you're going to face hard things, but what is the hard that you can at least do right now? That's actually going to move you towards healing and wholeness more so.
Yeah.
So as you started to transition, because I know you had a lot of revelation in what you were going through, what you've gone through. Now you have this fuller revelation of your nervous system, your learning, because I can hear, Melissa, the continuum of your life. Here's my story of my past, and I wanted to do something with it. My brother, I was exposed to that, and all of a sudden I see these angels here in the earth who are nurses, and you became a nurse. And so can you maybe chart that journey, because you were taking what was hard and you are now starting to bridge it to do something with your story?
Yeah. I mean, I thought that I felt at that time when my brother died that like the only thing that made sense to me was to do something that could help people.
Yeah.
Right. And I was already in college, just didn't really know exactly. I think I knew at some level very early on that I was going to be in medicine in some way, but I hadn't declared my major or anything. And yeah, when he died, it was like, okay, well, they were angels. And I'm like, I want to help people. I'm going to go into the ICU and I'm going to help people in this same like worst day of their lives, right? Unimaginable tragedy. I want to be that for somebody else, because that's what those nurses were for me. They took exceptional care of me.
Yeah.
They took exceptional care of my whole family, but I felt personally cared for by the nurses that were caring for my brother. I had multiple different times, like nurses hug me. And, one nurse brought me over. I was starting to get angry and was like, no, this doesn't make sense. He was having some reflexes, which can happen even if the brainstem is dead. And I know now, but I didn't at the time. So it didn't make sense. And so I had a nurse bring me over to the, show me the imaging and show me the bleed that he had in the brain that was compressing his, so I did. I set my sight on that and I'm going to do that. And I did. I was one of 500 people that applied for 2 positions in the pediatric ICU at the level 1 trauma center where I was living in Southern California. And I got one of the positions. I started my career in 2010 in pediatric nursing in an ICU. And the work there was unbelievably gratifying. There's nothing like bringing a child back from the brink of death. There's nothing like it. In hindsight, I now know probably not the best job for my nervous system because I was still very much in active healing. And then I started to notice kind of some discrepancies with what I was receiving care for as a person, as a patient.
Yes.
I was still struggling with all of my physical symptoms and I was being met with, here's another pill, here's another pill, here's another pill. And then as a professional, I remember thinking in the ICU, it's a little bit different. There's some nuance because the ICUs are so, we need ICUs, right? But there was just this level of like, really? Like, that's it? That's all we're doing? We're not
Right. Yeah.
helping them after that. And so I left the ICU after 7 years and I searched for any place in traditional medicine that I felt was what my perception of nursing was going to be.
Yeah.
Which was really to help people be well, right? That's why people go into nursing. That's why people are doctors, is because they want to help people. I didn't feel ever I was helping people the way I was supposed to. And then in 2018 was when I was working in a primary care clinic. And I thought maybe outpatient will be better. And it was actually way worse than inpatient. It was even more the disconnect between what I thought it was going to be and what it actually was even bigger. The gap was even bigger. I felt myself kind of like at one point just, oh my gosh, I can't do this. It was so misaligned.
Yeah.
I was working at that time, I was working in a position where it was a very autonomous position. It was called nurse clinic. I ran my own schedule. I saw patients from start to finish completely independently. I had 22 patients a day on my schedule.
Wow.
And I would run them through, do vitals, do assessment, take their history, run them through my protocol. And if they met protocol, I would treat them and send them away, which treatment meant prescription, right? So if they met protocol, we would see things like upper respiratory infections, STDs, urinary tract infections, low complication. And I remember just being like, I can't do this. This is not what I thought I was going to be doing. Like there was no time to actually educate people. There was no time to get their story. There was no time to ask them about their trauma or their nutrition or their stress levels. It was like, okay, what's wrong? You got blood in your urine? Okay, great. Let's UTI, go.
Yeah.
And it was so disconnected. And
well, I love that you're actually talking about, there's like 2 kind of themes in that outside of like just looking at a career. It's alignment, being aligned with what you're called to do. And I don't think that we all know what that alignment looks like until you actually walk the journey where the Lord keeps giving you greater revelation. And this is what I hear, Melissa, is that as you're walking this out, you're getting revelation about a system, about yourself. But I also want to add that it doesn't mean that you stay paralyzed in your life, that even though there's times, right, that your nervous system is like, I can't do this, but you still were trying to search out, Lord, how do I bring kingdom here? How do I basically become a helper for you so that people know that they're more than just the essence of what they walk through? And that's what I keep hearing is when you're questioning alignment, you're getting greater revelation, and your heart just wants to help people. So I hear this greater story, which then, of course, you in this revelation, I know is what led you to leaving the nursing career, then moved on to something even different. And it's just a story that just you keep rising up. More revelation, more healing, more rising up. And that's what I want women to hear from you, is that as you're walking, revelation comes and greater understanding and greater depth of where the Lord is taking you into your call and alignment. Can you, share with women now, because where you are is it's different and it's unique and so needed. Now you are in holistic health and you're an owner and leading a business and an entrepreneur and a visionary.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think clarity comes from action, right? So like taking steps forward, like none of what I did was a failure or the wrong turn or anything. Like I believe Romans 8:28 is my favorite verse in the Bible. It says God works all things for the good of those who love him. And I firmly believe that I needed every single one of the jobs that I've had.
Amen.
And needed to take every single one of those steps. But every time it was, gosh, this is not aligned either. And then it was hopefully the response to like recognizing, like for me, I recognize, okay, the common denominator is me. This is a me problem. This is not the job. I think for me, that made me look introspectively. What is going on in here? What is my soul trying to tell me?
Melissa, that is so powerful, because I just want to capture that moment for people. There is a lot of people who are moving from career to career to career. Like they're trying to do this program or this service or this ministry. And for some people, it's not a wrong alignment. What you're really speaking of is maybe some women are actually where they're supposed to be, but there's things internally that there is a need for introspection to say, maybe God has you exactly where you need to be right now. Maybe it's not permanent, but right now. And you're constantly feeling the anxiety as though you're never happy or you feel like you've missed the mark.
Yeah.
And that is so important. I love that you said there was nothing that you did that was wrong. It was a constant progression. I just wanted to capture that for people, because I know there is, for some, they feel like they're wandering in the wilderness and they haven't got it right just yet.
Yeah. You can't surprise. None of that was a surprise to the Lord.
No.
Right? Like that brings me so much comfort. I remind myself all the time, if I'm making a decision, if I'm fretting about, like whatever, where we're going to go, on a trip, or what school my kids are going to go to, or what, like none of it is a surprise to the Lord. If I'm being at a crossroads and I'm like, I can go left or I can go right. And I make that decision and I don't think twice about it, because I'm either going to learn something or it's going to happen the way I want. But either way, it's not a surprise to the Lord, because even if going left is the wrong choice, the Lord already knew I was going to go left.
Mm-hmm. And
because
then what
my story was already, it was already written. So I'm like, whew, I can't mess it up.
Because I think isn't there the quote is that God has already taken into consideration your failures and mistakes in his process. So, and it leaves you in a place of humility. And I mean, even at the beginning, you were identifying we are a work in progress. And because we are wanting at the forefront of everything we do is that we just want to honor and glorify God, and we want to help his children. And that's ultimately the goal. So if we make a mess of it all along the way, it's that we are not the savior of the world. Jesus is. And we keep pointing people to his direction and not ours. And you're doing all of that work, and you've been working with so many different people today. So I'm wondering if you can just share, as I know people are looking or heard just different parts of your story along this continuum today. What do you think has been your greatest lesson, your greatest success in all of it? I know it's a big question. I want women to be encouraged by you.
Yeah, I think my greatest success is absolutely integrating and coming to a place of full belief that I am his. 100%. That is the best. I used to carry around the orphan spirit. My dad died. My mom is very unwell. I don't have a relationship with her anymore. And my whole family is fractured. My brother died. All these other things have happened since then too. And I carried the orphan spirit. I'm not loved. I'm not worthy for a long time.
Yeah.
and shedding that, being delivered from that belief. And now I truly believe that I am a daughter of the King, and I've embodied that. Almost nothing can faze me anymore. It doesn't mean days aren't hard. There's certainly hard days, and I still see these patterns show up sometimes, but I recognize it really quick, and then I just remind myself of who I am.
Yeah. That's so good. And I think
Yeah.
that's a reminder for every single person is that you
Yeah.
can access all the tools, all the strategies, you can be introspective, you can do all of the right things. But what happens when life shows up in a way that you didn't anticipate, you didn't plan for it? And Melissa, what I love is that you said, I'm remembering who I belong to. And that is that identity piece that all of us have to wrestle with. We can't plan or chart out perfectly what it's going to look like. And when we fall or we fail, make mistakes or experience hard things, we have to be rock solid in our identity with him because
Yep.
it's not about perfection.
Yep. Yeah, and that's why it's like identity and nervous system regulation are two of the first things that I teach, because your identity has to be rooted in truth.
So
And
good.
when your identity is rooted in lies and identities that other people have put on you, or other your past, all of these other, inputs have put an identity on you. I used to say, several years ago when I first started my business, I'm going to, like, new year, new you. I'm going to teach you like a new you. And I've realized over the past couple years, it's not at all what I'm doing. I'm actually helping you return home to you,
Oh,
because the
I love
truth
that.
of who you are is inside already. It's
Yeah.
just all the lies, the trauma, the lies, the past experiences, the identities from your parents, from siblings, from other people who are on top of it. And we have to uncover all of that so we can get back to the true you, not a new you.
So that's so good. Okay, just before we close off, I want to get you to do something because I know that there's women believing lies about themselves. So, what would you say is the biggest lie that women believe? And I want you to speak to them with that lie.
Yeah, 100%. I am not worthy.
Oh,
That's the biggest lie that people believe, is that I am not worthy. I am not enough. It's kind of the same variation. I am not worthy. I am not enough. And I rebuke that. That's a lie from the pit of hell. I rebuke it in Jesus' name.
yes.
You are, in fact, a daughter of the King. You are worthy just by being his daughter. He made you in his image. He knit you together in your mother's womb. He knows every hair on your head. He made you exactly as you are supposed to be, and you are his, which makes you, by definition, worthy. And there's nothing on the inside. If we break you open, I am not worthy, it doesn't live anywhere inside of you. There's no piece of DNA that says Melissa, born in, 1985, she's not worthy. It doesn't exist. That all exists in your head. It's not truth. So aligning yourself with his truth, the truth of who he says you are, that's how you heal.
Yeah, that is so good. Amen to that. That's so powerful, Melissa. Thank you so much for joining me on Sword and Grace Unscripted. I love your story. I want to encourage everybody to follow Melissa, follow what she's doing. I will be adding all of her ways you can reach out to her. She's doing inspiring things for people and seeing lives transformed. And we need that in the kingdom, especially with where the world is going.
Yeah.
So again, thank you for what you were doing for the kingdom. Such a blessing, and cheering you on.
Thank
Over
you.
here.
It's the honor of a lifetime. Honestly, it's the
I
honor of a
know.
lifetime.
Yeah, it's so good, Melissa. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.